Today we are going to talk about a very, very important and an interesting topic of diabetes. Now, normally when we talk about diabetes in children, we always talk about type 1 as the primary focus. But today what we're going to do is that we'll discuss about 6 cases who presented like type 1 diabetes, were managed with insulin at one point or the other. But ultimately they had something interesting in them, as to some of them might we are able to switch over to a particular oral medication. In some cases we were able to look at more complications, other issues. So this is the importance of how we go beyond type 1 diabetes, and this is what we're going to discuss about today. We've got 6 interesting cases which will be covered sequentially, covering the entire range of non-type 1 pediatric and adolescent picture in that regard. How do you classify diabetes? Onset less than 6 months, you think of neonatal, do imaging and then genetic studies. If the imaging is not clear, you want to know whether pancreas is formed or not. What is the better test, Naveen, in this setting? Which test will give you pancreatic information?
So we can do a stool elastase, or we can do CT.
So fecal elastase is the best marker, because even on CT sometimes pancreas is not very clearly visible. Now, if the onset is after 6 months of age, whether there is a decayed presentation, yes, and the child is needing insulin, this is type 1. Don't worry. So decay at onset, insulin requirement, don't do any workup. If you do not need insulin now, it may be honeymoon phase for some time, but maybe 1 year, 2 years, still not requirement, then you do a GAD antibody. If the antibody is positive, this is type 1. If it is negative, go for MODI. On the other hand, if there is no decay and there is no obesity, now this is a confusing picture. This can be MODI or it can be LADA, because it may evolve over time. So don't leave it, do a GAD antibody. If the antibody is positive, this is LADA. If it is negative, go for a genetic study in that perspective. And if there is obesity, no ketosis, child is stable, this is most likely a type 2 diabetes. So this is how you classify. So don't do investigations in everybody. You just classify like that. We'll take the case again. The first case, 16-year-old polyuria. What we found here was that he actually presented with decay. But the problem was that because he was obese, we thought that this could be non-type 1 diabetes and stopped, and the problem happened that he presented with decay later on. So if we just go by our algorithm that we have discussed, we say that this child has hyperglycemia, age is 1 to 18. He presented with DKA. He does not require insulin. You should have got a GAD antibody done, and that could have prevented you from developing this DKA. Second case, the same 18-year-old girl with increased urine output, and in this case was labeled as type 1 diabetes, even though there was no DKA, and was a lean individual. GAD was negative and turned out to be a MODI sort of a form. So if you look here, again, you have to look at in somebody who doesn't have a DKA and who is non-obese, the key parameter there is to look at GAD antibody. If it is negative, go for a MODI testing, which becomes important in that setting. 16-year-old boy with obesity, there is hyperglycemia. HbA1c is 8.3, ketone is 0.8. BMI 32, acanthosis present. What do you think here, Sayan?
It's most likely type 2, sir, because acanthosis and all are present.
So this is already obesity without decay. So again, more than 1 year, obese, no decay. This is most likely type 2 diabetes in that setting. Now, because the HbA1c is not very high, you can start on metformin alone in this setting. And finally, you've got this 18-year-old girl with obesity, similar picture, but HbA1c is 10, mild ketosis. So what will you do here?
Sir, is the patient having osmotic symptoms?
Ketones are present.
Sir, will require insulin initially.
So better to start insulin, maybe basal insulin rather than a proper basal bolus for type 1. So this is how the algorithm will tell you. 1 to 18 years, decay is not there per se, but there is ketosis. Child is obese. You have to consider that maybe basal insulin will be required in this setting. So this is where you can classify. So essentially what you're looking at is 3 things. The age, 1 year, 1 to 18 years. Second is with regards to decay, yes, no. Obesity, yes, no. Just 3 things, and most of the things come out from there. And then you have to do 2 things, GAD antibody and genetics.
This was a case of a 17-year-old who presented to us with high blood sugars for the last 6 months, had osmotic symptoms, had polyuria, weight loss of around 10 kgs in the last 6 months. Importantly, there was no family history of diabetes mellitus.
So this is not genetics.
So we can't say de novo mutations can occur.
So what are the 4 features which will say it is genetic?
So severe, syndromic, segregated, and the final.
Soon.
Huh.
So this is not soon. It is severe, but not segregating.
Sir,
And
but
not
it is
seasonal.
soon with respect to diabetes.
Yeah, for diabetes, yeah. So you have to consider that, but you have to, but it could be type 1 also for all that.
On examination, the child had normal BMI, no acanthosis, no lipodystrophy. So the possibilities at this point of time, we should consider these primarily, but the type 1 is ruled out because the child is having high sugars for the last 6 months, but no decay. Type 2 is also ruled out at this point of time because the child is non-obese and also having no features of metabolic syndrome. So the 2 possibilities at this point of time would be a MODY or a LADA. The investigations revealed a high blood sugar HbA1c of 11%, but the ketones were normal. So again, MODY and LADA stands out at this point of time.
Which form of MODY?
So at this point of time, with such high glucose, it will be most likely HNF1 alpha or HNF4 alpha.
Okay.
The residual pancreatic function we checked, it was also within normal limits. The C-peptide was 1.4 nanograms per ml. So according to the algorithm we just saw, to differentiate LADA and MODY at this point of time, we need to do a GAD antibody. So did we do a GAD antibody, or we found anything else at this point of time which changed the course of our thinking? The most crucial history which we came to know was that the child had severe abdominal pain 1 year back. He was treated at a local health facility, and the CECT mentioned necrotizing pancreatitis at that point of time. And this is his CECT report. And I have also underlined a section of the report. There was atrophy of the body and the tail of the pancreas. The reason for me highlighting this portion I'll come to later. So the diagnosis was revised at this point of time to be a case of secondary diabetes or a type 3C diabetes as it is known nowadays. So what is the difference of this form of diabetes and others which we have already discussed previously? These cases have more chances of hypoglycemia because, as we already mentioned, these have also a glucagon deficiency. So the corrective phase of a hypoglycemia is reduced in these cases. And also because it is a total pancreatic involvement, the child can have features of malabsorption and can have stomach pain and all most of the time. So I would like to review a few articles featuring these cases. So cases of diabetes mellitus after an episode of acute pancreatitis, it has been shown that diabetes mellitus develops mostly 1 year, starting from 1 year, to an incidence of around 15%, and it increases over a period of time to 23%. A recent meta-analysis also published in 2019 gives the incidence of diabetes mellitus at 20% within the first 5 years, and as the follow-up increases, the incidence of diabetes also increases. This is mostly because cases of acute pancreatitis, when followed up over a long period, go into chronic pancreatitis, and there also the percentage increases. And so in these cases, after an episode of acute pancreatitis, we need to follow up yearly for the same. Again, as it has been highlighted in this review, which has been published in 2021, is that almost 80% cases of post-pancreatic diabetes mellitus develop after an episode of acute pancreatitis, and including non-necrotizing pancreatitis, diabetes mellitus develops. So what has been seen in this article also is that pre-diabetes and diabetes is common in acute pancreatitis, and more so 40% patients develop them at discharge. But this is mostly a transient form because, as we can see in the previous patients, it declines to around 23% at 1 year.
So this is pretty much like when you say cellular surgery is done for DI,
yes,
you will have an acute phase when you will have DI, which will happen, which is because of the swelling. So when your pancreas is swollen, you will have diabetes. Then some people will improve because the damage may not be there. And then gradually your secondary phenomena, vascular phenomena, autoimmune phenomena, which will cause damage. And then that will be the permanent diabetes. So very important to remember, as in this case, it may take up to 1 year for diabetes to manifest. And that's why if you have somebody with pancreatitis who is losing weight, not doing well, then check sugars immediately. Typical of this is CF-related diabetes, which again presents with somebody with worsening lung functions, recurrent infections, then the sugars may be high in that setting.
So the severity of acute pancreatitis appears to have a minimal effect on the risk of diabetes. Why I highlighted this point is that a person having no necrosis can also present with diabetes, as has been seen in this paper, is that around 70% of those patients who develop diabetes were found to have less than 30%, and in many cases, no necrosis at all who develop diabetes. So yearly follow-up is important. Now, this review mentions that these patients predominantly have insulin deficiency. Hyperglycemia in these cases mainly manifests in the postprandial state. So if we go on regularly checking a fasting sugar sample, it may be normal, because fasting hyperglycemia develops very late in the course of disease. As has been seen, is that oral glucose tolerance test can detect when the beta cell function is reduced to 64%, as against checking fasting blood glucose when it is detected at around 93% of beta cell deficiency. So the treatment here is, again, we have to balance between the advantages and the disadvantages, because again, if we start with metformin, these children will again have typical GI symptoms, which we try to avoid in patients with acute pancreatitis. If we give sulfonylureas, there are always risks of hypoglycemia, and again, these patients have an impaired glucagon effect, so again, increased risks of hypoglycemia. DPP-4 and GLP-1 analogs are contraindicated in patients with pancreatitis. Again, alpha glucosidase inhibitors, if we give GI symptoms like diarrhea, abdominal pain will develop. Now, pioglitazones will have a beneficial effect of increasing weight in these settings, but again, insulin resistance is not present. So how much it will work, we again don't know. So we come back to the only therapy, that is insulin. So as I already mentioned, insulin remains the mainstay, and we have to balance between the advantages and disadvantages of each oral drug.